there, sorry for the audio quality. My mic stopped working, but the content was just too good to keep reshooting. I really apologize for any inconvenience. Please enjoy.
What? Don't we get a red light or something? What are we on?
Welcome to Dominator TV, episode 12. I'm your host, Dave the Dominator. Today, we have a special guest, colleague, and best friend with us to talk about fair housing and what it means for you. Hello, Keith. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Keith Nitsch is a multi-million-dollar producer serving the southeast regions of Tennessee. Keith has successfully closed more land transactions than I think is humanly possible. He's created his own niche of working with people who simply want to get their job done no matter what. Most recently, he has crowned himself as the tiny home seller of rural East Tennessee. Keith, do you think you'll have more tiny homes to sell to come this year?
I sure do, Dave.
You know, when we sat down, we talked about that I was going to let you hold the mic, and you still have failed
I ain't gonna touch this
to
mic.
actually take the mic from me. Amateurs. I asked Keith to host this episode, to guest host this episode, because he's worked with some of the most diverse group of clientele that one could have. I think last year, our broker actually said that Keith had the largest range of diversity in his client base. Would you say that's true?
Sure is, Dave. Sure is.
Inevitably, when you work with tons of people, it's imperative to have an equal approach with all of your consumers. Each person we work with has their own beliefs, values, and ways of doing business. Tell me a little bit about the different kinds of people you've worked with. And obviously, you're a little new to this, so we want to talk about the people that have been super hard, people that have been super easy, different cultures, sexual orientations. Let's talk about that diverse group of people. Take the mic.
Hello, I'm Keith. So, the group of people that I work with, the thing is, just look at people like they're just people. You know, it's not about look at them like, oh, this is a gay couple or this is a old lady. They're all just persons trying to reach a goal.
But have you worked with gay people and old ladies?
I've worked with gay couples, I've worked with old ladies, I've worked with the good, the bad, the ugly, the in-between. I've worked with the rich folk, I've worked with the not-so-rich folk.
What about religions? I'm sure you've had a lot of different religions too, right?
I sure have. I've had some diversity in there too. So, that's me.
One thing that's on everyone's mind is fair housing. It's no secret that many people in this business practice redlining and steering as a way to keep marginalized people in certain areas. The Fair Housing Act covers color, disability, familial status, national origin, race, religion, and sex. The National Association of Realtors has added gender identity and sexual orientation to that list to further promote inclusiveness in our communities. In my opinion, the list could go on to include those who need service animals, elderly people, people with specific beliefs and moral codes that might not have anything to do with religion, and so many more classes of people that would be considered different. The truth is that each person is different, and there really shouldn't be any room to discriminate against anyone for any reason. Keith might like to wear the color blue, and that just might piss me off. There's absolutely no reason that I should discriminate against the color blue. But how in the world are these policies enforced? If there's one policy that stands above all for real estate professionals, it is fair housing. I believe that violating these policies is the quickest way to find yourself without a career. I wanted to talk to you about some of the experiences that Keith and I have had regarding clients who asked us to discriminate and how we handled those situations. I'll take the cake, and I will say that most recently I was showing property to some people in the inner city of Cleveland near Inman Street, and one of the questions they asked me was, are there a lot of black people who live in the neighborhood? Naturally, my very first instinct was to just, absolutely, why in the world would that matter? There are all kinds of people that live all over Cleveland. I can't tell you any statistics regarding what race or what religion or anything like that lives here, and I actually told them that if that was a way that they wanted me to practice business, that I would not do it and they would have to find somebody else. Keith, let's talk about your experiences with someone having these sort of issues.
So in my years of real estate, everybody's gonna run into this, where you're gonna ask a realtor or a professional or whatever it is that you're into. You're gonna ask who is around. It's just, it doesn't always have to be a discriminatory thing. But as a professional standpoint, when you go ahead and get asked that, or get put in a situation where you have to choose, to give this type of information to a client or a friend or anybody, your best bet is to be the source of the source for this information. So I've been asked a very similar question as Dave. Hey, what kind of people live in this neighborhood? Do you know anything about the neighbors here or whatever it is? And they will really try to pin you down. They'll be like, hey, I know you live around here. Don't you live 3 streets up? Like, you need to tell me what's actually going on. They all want you to buddy it. Well, you really got to just be like, I really don't know. I mean, you might not know. Just because your neighbor's white or your neighbor's a black person or a yellow person doesn't mean the whole neighborhood's yellow. Doesn't mean the whole neighborhood's black. You don't have that information as a professional. You just don't. So you got to be the source of the source. You got to tell them, hey, I don't know, but if you are interested in knowing the diversity of an area of town or a city or a place that you're moving, even a state, maybe you just want to know the demographics of a state, there are plenty of researchers out there that do just that. They just want to know who lives where. They're traveling, they're marking trends, they're plotting graphs, and they got that information for you. So this one time I was with a client, and he was from a different country, and he was looking for a area where he could have similar friends to him, and I didn't have that information. I didn't know any specific area which this guy could have friends. I don't know. So I did what I do. I say, hey, you need to look at market trends. You need to look at some information, independent research that's out there, and they'll help you, get an area of town. Well, he ended up changing a hotel. He found a place that had supposedly more of an area that was for him. He moved his hotel to that area. He found a hotel, got a room, stayed there for a couple weeks. Ended up having a guy 2 doors down in the hotel hallway that was in the same predicament as him, moving over for work, looking for a house, didn't have a realtor, and my guy was so impressed with the way that I was able to help him, help him find what he was looking for, that I actually helped his guy down the hall, his acquaintance, find a house as well. So just conducting yourself in a manner that isn't about any certain prejudice or any certain belief, because sometimes it goes into politics and all sorts of stuff. You just gotta boil it down to this is a person who needs your help, and it works. In my opinion, you should have that throughout all of their areas in life. If you see somebody out there, you should help them. It doesn't matter if you see that they're in Gucci or if they're in Walmart brand. They're still a person, they're still help. If they got their tires flat, their tires flat.
Walmart doesn't sell Gucci.
No, Dave.
So I think the example that you gave was very symbolic of someone who wanted a certain level of inclusion. Although he was asking you to significantly help you find people, and of course you didn't, because the law does restrict that, and that's just not how we practice, he wanted to feel included. My experience with people who ask about certain demographics and things like this is usually one more of prejudice, and they have this mistaken idea that because a certain demographic lives in a certain area, that's going to affect your crime rate, that's going to affect this and this, and statistically that's not even true. On top of that, as far as a humanity stance go, there's no reason to assume that someone's ethnicity has anything to do with how much money they have or where they come from or anything like that. It's just been proven to not be true. It's not right. It's not the way to do business with people in the first place. So I'm more defensive when it comes to that. And I'm very quick to shut someone down and tell them that I'm not going to work with them simply because I don't want to leave any room for discrimination. What Keith did is actually also a really good idea. I mean, that's up to them. If I felt like they were being discriminatory, I wouldn't continue to work with them. But in this case, this guy just wanted to be around people that were like him. He wanted to help find a community. Very similar, if somebody wanted to live near a church of their choice, that would be up to them to look up the churches and find what churches are available and how those fit into their beliefs, because that's information that we just do not know. And if you've ever been to Bradley County, Tennessee, even thinking of going to every church to find out would be not even possible, nor would it be ethical, unless you want to do it for yourself, of course. One of the things that the Real Estate Commission does to make sure that professionals are obeying the law is to send volunteer testers to real estate agents to see how well they know the law. Keith and I together have probably had more experience than most any professional with these testers, and I wanted to take a minute to talk about it. That was one of the very specific reasons I wanted Keith on this episode, was because we've handled testers together, we've handled them side by side. I've been right down the hall while another agent in my office, who's now my teammate, had to deal with a tester. And I'm actually really happy that they put us to the challenge like this, because if you don't know what's coming, you can really get in a lot of trouble. So the testers are usually volunteers. The Real Estate Commission will send them out to a new office, or I'm sure they have all sorts of, sometimes they're probably random, sometimes they pick new offices. We don't really know why they choose who they choose, and we also don't definitively know 100% certain when we are being tested. But it's pretty obvious, because usually someone will walk in and they will either ask you to point them into a direction where this certain type of people live or do not live, or they'll ask you, hey, what's the best area of town? To which they're usually insinuating what's the safest area of town. And in those situations, we just have to sort of send those people to crime statistic websites, have them call the sheriff's department, things like that. I mean, we just cannot say what's a safe neighborhood and what's not, because we don't know what your definition of safe is. I wanted to talk about two testing experiences that I've had. One I'm not totally sure, the other I'm 100% sure. One, a gentleman wanted to sell his property, but he wanted to make sure that no one could ever use a firearm on it. And he wanted to make sure that I sold the property to someone who was anti-firearm. So I ended up telling him that we wouldn't do business. I'm not 100% sure if that was just his individual stance or if that was a tester. Can't really say. What I can say was a tester was I'm sitting in my old office right up the hall from our conference room, and I wasn't eavesdropping, but my teammate Terry had just decided to leave the door open while he met with a walk-in that we had to the office. Testers love to be walk-ins. So the customer walks in and they say, hey, I'm interested in buying a house. And the very first thing they asked was, can you tell me about agency law? Immediately the record scratched in my head, and I knew, like, most buyers, I mean, I work with tons of buyers every single day, and I've never been asked that question. And it is a responsibility of the realtor to explain agency law and how your relationship with your agent can vary from what other agents may be willing to offer you. And they have to be offered a choice of what type of agency we're going to practice, and they have to enter that agreement. And a lot of people don't know that. So by having a tester or someone come in and say, hey, explain to me agency law, that's one of the very first things that you're supposed to do anyway. They're seeing if you know your stuff. Fortunately, Terry did, and we got the broker involved, and we were able to handle that one really smoothly and answer the questions. And of course, we never heard from that tester again. That one I'm 100% sure. Keith has a few good ones, and we both watched each other take tests. Maybe you can think of one good tester?
I could think of one good tester. It was quite a few years back, and they just came in right off the street. We used to have a glass front face on this office, so they would see you sitting at your desk, and they came on in. I got them some water, sat them down, and I'm like, trying to figure out what it is that they're looking for. As an agent, that's one of the first things. Hey, how you a buyer? Are you a seller? What are you doing? And all they wanted to talk about was in one specific side of town. They just wanted to know everything there was to know about this side of town. Wouldn't even answer questions about what kind of house they were looking for. I would be like, well, how many bedrooms are you looking for? How big is your family? They were dodging every little thing. I was like, do you have any kids? Conversation completely averted. Just went back to, well, what's over here on this side of town? Are people crazy over here? What's it like? I mean, off the wall stuff. Stuff that a normal person just wouldn't ask you. Like, they're awkward. They're just like coming from the left, just boom, and you're like, what are you doing? That's a little weird. So I've had walk-ins like that.
I'm sure they thought you were weird too.
I'm a weird guy, and I like it like that. Some people are into weird.
I'm into weird.
Dave's into weird.
So rather than have the opinion that these testers are pesky, I'm actually really thankful that they're out there making sure that agents truly do value fair housing regulations. There are so many freaking agents in this town. We just don't have the room for somebody who could even consider discrimination or something like that. I mean, there's just no market for that, and it's just not the right thing to do. Within the last year, we've seen speculation into social media giant Facebook for its advertising criteria that previously allowed professionals like me to target certain income brackets when they're paying for advertising. Now, I never took advantage of targeting these income brackets, and you can target their age and stuff like that. But that was something that didn't occur to me. I saw the option, and usually I would just target by area, like Cleveland or Atlanta, or obviously I don't advertise in Atlanta, but if I was advertising a property in Tennessee to people in Atlanta, I could do that. I would specifically use the area targeting. But one of the things, I always saw that it had choose their age, choose their income levels, and I never chose to do that, but it just never dawned on me how bad that could have been. So Facebook has been under very, very heavy scrutiny, mostly because it's the biggest that there is right now. So, hey, I mean, I say that to say that people are watching. On top of this, we see real estate commissions really cracking down. I think New York is where it's happened. They're cracking down on fair housing violations left and right up there. And
Steering. West.
Yeah, steering violations. So steering is when you sort of direct someone to a certain part of town for whatever reason you may have, usually involving prejudice, like maybe if they're a certain income bracket, you think they should live over here, and you try to put them over there with other people. That's not even up to us, man. That's just up to people where they want to live. At the end of the day, somebody can come to me and say, hey, I don't want to be on Chestnut Street. And by all means, I'll be like, okay, I won't send them any houses on Chestnut Street. But I never take the position to be like, ooh, they wouldn't like Chestnut Street. That's not what we're here to do. At the end of the day, a violation like this can ultimately see a license revoked from the professional who's failed to uphold those guidelines. In our business, I encourage everyone to go above the call of law and to question what aspects they may have not previously been aware of that could be discriminatory. I'm sure there are things that we do on a daily basis that could be considered it. We just don't think it. Maybe we come across somebody who's vegetarian and we take them to a restaurant that doesn't have any options for. I mean, that's not that that's discriminatory. It's just we're not thinking about people. So I think that a good way to sort of curb discrimination is to consider others in everything we do. Consistently.
That's the real thing.
You gotta do the same thing for everybody. So one of the things that has made this push to all these violations and all these people who are finally saying something about it is what I have called for many years the age of self-expression. Keith, did you know me in 2012?
I did.
Keith, do you remember me saying the following statement? I once listened to a guy, I don't remember who he was a public speaker, he was some sort of influencer, and he said, after the age of information, which is the Google smartphone age, iPhones, we have everything available at our fingertips, as information is continued to be discovered, we get it immediately. I said, because of what I heard from this guy, after the age of information comes the age of self-expression. Now we have all the information we could ever have. Now people want to hear their voices. People want their voices to be heard. People want to step out and say, hey, we've been marginalized. We've been this, we've been that. Did I say that?
He did.
Did it happen?
It is.
So, several things that happened. I think they're all wonderful. We saw lots of movement in the Black Lives Matter sector. A lot of people standing out against police brutality. A lot of people standing out against sexual harassment, both in Washington and in Hollywood. Women's March, the equality, the Marriage Equality Act. We see it still. There's a lot of transgender movements out there right now, and I think it's wonderful. It's sort of like a renaissance. So, in the age of self-expression, more and more people are sharing their Me Too stories, or they're saying, hey, I felt marginalized, or I did this and I did that. So naturally, we're going to see an increase in these sort of violations, because this is just something that a lot of people, unfortunately, weren't thinking about. We're just doing business as usual, not thinking of how we might be marginalizing someone else. So I think the age of self-expression has really dug into our business and has dictated where legislation is going to make sure that everyone is protected. As I'm saying this, I'm looking at a plaque that I have here on my wall. It's HR 1447, backed by Realogy, which is our parent company. And basically, the Fair Housing Act, as I mentioned earlier, does not cover gender identity or sexual orientation federally. In 28 states, it is legal for an individual, not a realtor, to discriminate based on sexual orientation or gender identity. HR 1447 was a piece of legislation that was put into motion to try to counteract that, to add those as protected classes. A lot of states have already done it. The National Association of Realtors has done it. If anybody wears this pretty little pin that I accidentally had covered up there, they have voted not to discriminate against those people. But things like that wouldn't have happened without the age of self-expression. So living with somebody like me and watching me over the last 10 years talk about the age of self-expression, what have you seen?
I've seen you, Dave. Express yourself.
Are you trying to talk about me coming out of the closet?
Let me tell you, Dave, he'll express himself. No, I've seen you grow, man. You know, that was a big thing for you, you know, to do. And as society, you know, was growing, you were growing with society.
What was a big thing? Talking about the age of self-expression or coming out of the closet?
Coming out the closet.
Oh, okay.
Self-expression too, but you know, it's just one more thing. You know, it just shows you that it doesn't matter what that person's, you know, dealing with. You don't know what they're going through. You know, so you really do got to treat everybody the same. You know, it doesn't matter what their orientation is, what their identify is. If you see somebody walking down the street and you can't tell if they're a boy or a girl, don't even guess. Just be like, hey.
Don't even assume that they have to be a boy or a girl. I mean, I'm Mr. Progressive here. So we want to sort of wrap up, because we've taken a lot of time for this episode versus any other episode that I've done. But this is the first time I've had another person on the podcast / video series, and I really wanted to test this format. I really like it. I want to see how things go. So, this is something I didn't tell you I was going to ask, Keith, but it is a complimentary service here provided by the viewers and producers at DominatorTV. If viewers or listeners want to get in touch with you to learn more about your business or how they can reach you, where can they find you? Are you online?
Am I online? If you want to find me, you just contact Dave. He'll get you in touch with the best.
What Keith is trying to say is that he can be found on Facebook at Keith Nitsch, Nitsch. I'll put that in the description below. And he can also, Cortana's over here on my computer. She's pitching in. She's a Keith fan. And you can also contact him if you have any real estate needs. I'll be happy to throw his phone number in there as well. He is a super awesome guy, and between the two of us, I don't think there's any type of client we haven't covered. Until next time, this has been, what does it say?
DominatorTV!